What's going on, Rift Church leaders? Pastor Josh here, and I am sitting outside the gym that I work out at. And I just left, and while I was in there, I noticed something that I think totally applies, and this is why I'm doing this video in my car for this leadership lesson of January 2023. The gym was packed because it's pretty much New Year's. And I noticed that there was a lot of younger guys in there that weighed about 50 pounds soaking wet. And they were wearing stringer tank tops, short shorts, and they were standing in front of the mirror after they were doing their exercises, and they were posing and flexing. Or I guess not really posing and flexing, but they were trying to pose and flex because they didn't have anything to flex. And I got to thinking about this. And I got to thinking about our lesson for the month is on humility. And what we're going to talk about this entire month is humility. And it made me really realize that isn't that the way humility is? People that are the most prideful are the ones that flex the most, try their hardest to impress everybody. But in reality, they're the ones that shouldn't be flexing at all, because they're the ones that have no longevity in anything that they do, and they've really never done anything of substance before. Well, that's why we're talking about humility, is because we want to make sure you guys understand our view and the why behind humility is so important to us. As you guys know, we have 3 H's that we look for in potential high-level leaders at Revolution Church. You're going to hear lessons on these this year. We look for number 1, holiness. We want you to be living right, because if you're not, then it all falls apart. Number 2, we want you to be hungry. In other words, you're not lazy, you work hard. And then number 3, we're looking for humility, humbleness. And honestly, out of all 3 of those, we found that humility is the most important, because if you're not humble, you're most likely struggling with sin. If you're not humble, you're definitely going to be lazy, and you're not going to be hungry to really work hard for the kingdom. A few other notes that I thought of when it comes to humility and why it's important to us. Well, number 1, let's define what humility is. I believe the Bible gives the best definition of humility when in the book of Philippians it says that we are supposed to think of others more than we think of ourselves. That is humility. Humility is saying it's not about me. It's not about my wants and my desires. It's about what Jesus wants me to do. And in the context of like a church staff or leadership, it's about what the church needs or what the ministry needs more than what I need or what I want. Humility is really the opposite of selfishness. It's the opposite of what we see so much in the Americanized church today, which is straight up consumerism. Number 2, I want to point out some ways that we apply this, the application for this, or how we see it plays out in the leaders of Revolution Church. And I'm going to go over these kind of in real quick fashion and just give you a heads up on what they mean just very quickly. Number 1, we've got some sayings when it comes to humility. I don't know if you know these are directly tied to humility, but we always say leaders eat last. So if you're on staff at Revolution Church, one way that we show humility and we practice humility is when we're at a staff event, or we're at a volunteer party, or we're serving food in any way whatsoever, we eat last. We're not the first in line stuffing our faces with food when the people that we're there to serve haven't even gotten a plate yet. No, we eat last. That's something that Simon Sinek came up with. It's actually based in military. Military leaders eat last whenever units eat. And so leaders eat last, number 1. Number 2, we always help stack chairs. How does this play out? We always help stack chairs. Who hates stacking chairs? Every single one of us hates stacking chairs. But one of the ways that we know you are humble, this is actually one of the things we look for before we even ask somebody to be on staff, is are you willing to stack chairs? I actually do a test most of the time when we're thinking about hiring somebody or bumping them up in leadership. And that is, I'll have some chairs to move outside my office, and I'll say, hey, before we meet, I need to move these chairs. And if that person helps me move the chairs, we go to the next part of the process. But if they don't help me move those chairs, then the interview essentially is done, and I know they're not ready to be a part of the Rev Church staff. So we stack chairs. Number 3, here's one. We park across the street at any of our services. Every single Sunday morning, we park in the Save-A-Lot parking lot. Why? Because we don't want the best parking places. Most churches have a parking spot that's the best spot that's saved just for the pastor or for the staff. We don't believe that's the way we should be as leaders. We believe that we should walk across the street, whether it's raining, whether it's snowing, whether we're sick, anything, we park across the street so that we can save the best spots for our visitors and for people other than ourselves. Number 4, you got to be willing to clean the bathrooms. You got to be willing to put flag banners out. Something that every single person on staff has done. You've got to be willing to do the jobs that nobody wants to do. That's how it plays out. Things to watch out for. These are some things that I've noticed, and I think you would agree with me you've noticed. Be careful saying phrases like, well, I didn't make that mess, so I'm not going to clean it up. Okay, that shows pride, and it shows a lack of humility. Be careful saying things like, well, that's not mine, so I'm not going to deal with it. Man, you are struggling with pride and there's no humility. Whenever you've got some bitterness growing up inside of you, whenever there's something between you and another person, humility means that you're willing to be the first one that calls that person on the phone. Didn't text them. You don't send them a message on Facebook. Remember, we do phone calls or face-to-face conversations, and it usually means when you're humble, you're the first one to apologize. You're the first one to say, I'm sorry I offended you. I'm sorry I made you upset. Even if you think you did nothing wrong. Even if you think, man, I didn't do anything wrong. Why are they mad at me? Humility is, I'm the first one that's going to apologize. I'm the first one that is going to reach out, okay? Be careful when you start thinking that your opinions are more important than the teams or the churches or the ministries, in other words. Be careful when you start thinking things like, well, I think we should do this, and everybody else is in agreement that we shouldn't do that. Well, I think our policy should be this. I think the church should completely change every one of their policies to fit what I want to do. That's the opposite of humility, which kind of goes with my last one. If you're unwilling to submit to accountability or any authority over you, then you're struggling with humility. One of the biggest reasons people are not involved in churches today is because they don't want any authority over them. They don't want anybody telling them what to do. And it's true on church staffs and with leaders as well. Let me give you just a little tidbit of my sermon that you're probably going to hear this after my sermon, but I'm going to talk about this week in my sermon, that accountability is not church hurt. Being held to a holy standard is not gaslighting. Being sat down and had a conversation with to grow is not abuse. So be thankful that you have leadership that cares enough about you and the organization to keep you in check and keep the entire team in check. So that's what we're looking for with humility. We're looking for those specific things, and we want you guys to know that that is the H that is the most important at Revolution Church. You guys need to think about this month. We're going to get this year kicked off talking about the right thing, the most important thing to us when we look for leaders, when we look for staff people, and that is humility. I love you guys. Hope this helps, and I hope this month we get some real insight from this teaching. Love you.